There, Buttercups. Your resident Teabelle here. Welcome to Hark, 'tis the Teabelle. Let's dive in for that tea today, huh? So today we're going to be diving into the Hamilton Turner Inn. And so just a few fun facts. It was built by J.D. Hall for a Mr. Samuel Pugh Hamilton. Well, Hamilton was also known as the Lord of Lafayette Square. He would become the mayor of Savannah. He was also the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And so, if anybody else was curious, I did a little dive on them. Okay, so the Knights Templar is about 900 years old. It was founded in 1118 AD by 9 French knights who traveled to the Holy Land. So they were banding together to initially protect Christians traveling to the Holy Land. And they were the first religious or military order of knighthood. Now later, they were considered the first soldier/monks of the ancient Christian Roman Catholic Church. They wrestled the Holy Land from the Islamic Saracens. If I mispronounced that, sorry guys. They helped establish and maintain the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem for almost 200 years. When a weak French pope, was being controlled by a greedy French king, this order was actually suppressed by the same church it was protecting. This did nothing but allow them to move in the shadows. Privately, it resurfaced in France in 1705. It would once again become public a century later with historical documentation. Now, today though, the order is a fully non-profit group that raises funds for and donates time to charities and relief groups that are already established. It is a non-political, non-profit charity assistant, basically. And men and women can both enter the order as knights and dames, respectively. And you don't have to have any specific denomination to be able to enter this. So they're still helping and protecting the people, just in a different way. I think it's cool that they've adapted. Now, back to Samuel Pugh Hamilton. Hamilton and his wife Sarah, which they did call Sally, were entertainers, and they desired a home that would meet their lavish needs. They spared no expense in the construction of their dream home. This home was built in 1873 and nicknamed the Grand Victorian Lady. It is located on Lafayette Square in the historic downtown district, and it is sometimes affectionately called the Mansion. It was no surprise that this was the first house in Savannah to install electricity, as Samuel was the president of Brush Electric Light and Power Company. Now, we should also note that this was only 4 years after Thomas Edison had invented the light bulb. This was huge for its time. People would simply gather outside the home to simply just to watch in awe as lights turned on. There, however, were the ones who feared that the home would explode. But that makes a lot of sense. They didn't know anything about electricity back then. Now, besides the use of electricity, it was one of the only homes to survive the fire of 1898 because the roof was resistant to the hot embers. So he definitely was very smart about how he built his dream home. He was also a naval officer who successfully ran the Yankee blockade into Savannah Harbor during the Civil War. He was essential. He delivered goods and supplies that were much needed, and he was paid well. Extremely well. He married Sarah Virginia Stillings in 1866. Now, she was married to his brother William Franklin Hamilton in 1856 prior, and they did have 2 boys together, which she did bring into her second marriage. It was around 1862 when William passed away from typhoid fever. So there's no crossover. It wasn't any kind of nefarious thing. It just kind of happened, about 4 years later. Now, Samuel and Sarah did have 4 kids together. Samuel was an art lover, and he collected valuable pieces from all over the world. His mansion was turned into a very well-protected private art museum, in a sense. So much so that he hired night guards. They were armed with rifles to watch over and stand guard on the roof. One morning, though, the night guard didn't come down from the roof. So someone went to check on him. And unfortunately, they found a gory sight. They found his body with an apparent gunshot in the back of his head. This crime went unsolved, guys. So after that terrible instance, no one else would take the role. But can you blame them? Samuel took the role on himself. It was only after several months of standing guard on the roof nightly that Samuel himself passed away after getting sick in 1899. This is when we know that the home stayed in the Hamilton family, until 1915. It was then sold to a Dr. Francis Turner. As Francis Turner was the owner, this home actually went through a lot of changes. But in the beginning, it was used as a family home, with the basement being used as an office for Dr. Turner. He was the first person in Savannah to own an electric car, and they lived in the home until 1926. The house was then turned into a boarding home. After the boarding house, it became home to the Marine Hospital nurses. And in 1940, 14 years later, the Turner family moved back in and he resumed his medical practice. While the basement was used for business, i.e. his medical practice, the rest of the home was used for hosting lavish parties. Now, the kids weren't obviously invited to these parties because they were probably young, but they would play with the, and general purpose, they would play with the pool balls on the billiard table. Well, one night, these kids were not pleased with their current game, and they went downstairs to roll one of the balls down the stairs accidentally so they could see what was going on. What were the adults up to, right? Well, unfortunately, one of the little girls got too close to the stairs and she tumbled to her death. So, if you happen to see a billiard ball rolling throughout the inn as night descends, perhaps the little girl is just letting you know she's there and she's curious about what's going on. Now, the home was sold in 1965 to the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. Now, the original plan was to clear the lot for either a playground for the nearby school or a parking deck. It really depends on who you ask. Whatever the original intention, though, of that specific buy, it wouldn't matter. It was moot. Why, you ask? House was saved by the Savannah Historic Foundation. It was reopened as an apartment complex in the early 70s after being vacant for the later part of the 60s. So, neighbors were not really thrilled when scandal grew with Joe Odom's wild parties. And in 1997, the inn was born. Charlie and Sue Strickland bought the house from Nancy Hillis with the intent to create the Hamilton Turner Inn. In 2003, Rob and Jane Sales took over the restoration, but they sold it to yet another couple. The current owners, Gay and Jim Dunlop, have been working with the Savannah Historic Foundation to maintain the legacy and historical importance of this great inn. So, all three of those couples had the same intent. I guess it was moving hands, but apparently they did a good job. Let me paint you a picture. It is late one night in 1969 when you hear gunshots ring out of the currently vacant Great Mansion. Was Samuel trying to remind people of his presence to repel any potential invaders? Interesting. You let me know what you think. Now, the founder and CEO of Ghost City Tours, Tim Nealon, had his own experience. Pre-Ghost City Tours, he chose to experience the great accommodations of this gorgeous place. Though he had high interest in the paranormal, this was just not one of those visits. It was around the hour of 2 a.m. when he heard footsteps walking past his bed. These footsteps actually woke him up. He was a bit unnerved in the dark room, as it felt like someone was walking towards him as he lay in the bed. He called out to whomever the footsteps belonged to, but got no reply. This is when the paranormal investigator came out in him, as he realized no one was in the room. He spent the rest of the night, listening, but heard nothing. It was quiet the rest of the night. And I just have to ask, did the spirit know this about Tom? Or did he just catch a vibe that Tom was throwing? Another experience was had by Brent Berry. He was 17 in 1969, working as an aircraft mechanic stationed at Hunter Army Airfield. He ventured to Savannah, but he was broke, so he chose to sleep in the currently vacant and neglected Great Mansion. He described the first floor as being really dirty, with broken glass and debris everywhere. He explored the second floor, which was a little better, but he didn't feel quite right. So he moved upstairs to the third floor, and it felt better. So he found a corner in one of the rooms and slept. The noises didn't take long to start converting sleep into fear. He was doing his best to be brave by convincing himself that it was typical noises old houses made. Except the noises changed. The noises were getting closer, as if they were sneaking up the stairs. He was truly terrified as he made his way up on a narrow staircase that led to a little room on the top of the house. It was the only way he could go, and he was trapped. He had a board in his hands with the plan to defend himself against whomever was trying to sneak into this house. He ended up on the roof where the moon was bright. He watched. He waited. He was anticipating something. He was a drunk kid from Denver, holding a board in his arms for protection, standing on the roof of a Victorian mansion in the bright light of the moon, wondering how he got himself into the situation. He waited, but no one ever came. He wasn't leaving until daylight, but he knew he was not getting any sleep that night. Now we all have to wonder, was Samuel trying again to make a point of checking to see who was in his house? He was very protective of it in life, so is he just the same in his afterlife? A rumor floats around that this house inspired the Haunted Mansion by Walt Disney. The French Gothic architecture and the natural vibe of it all makes this unsurprising. I wouldn't be surprised if it was true. Furthermore, a CNN report claims that the man himself, Walt Disney, sat on the bench in front of the mansion and sketched it. The only way we could know that for sure is to ask the man himself, and I have heard rumors that he has, frozen himself to come back to life, but this house does have a very historied past. And as most houses do in Savannah, it stands for something. So I hope you enjoyed this specific episode. You can email me at harktisthetbell@gmail.com. You can find us on the Facebook. You can go to Spotify, YouTube, and I am currently working on the TikTok channel as well. So I hope you enjoyed. Any comments or topics you think we should discuss that you think I might find interesting, I would love to hear it. I hope you guys have a spectacular week, and I will see you next week.